Today on episode 25 of the Backseat Fighter podcast, I, Charlie Binns, have the absolute honor of speaking with a dangerous submission specialist. He can tie you up, make you tap, put you to sleep, and has excellent ground and pound, and is the hometown hero this weekend at Cage Warriors 187 in Glasgow. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Backseat Fighter podcast for the very first time, Reese McEwan. Reese, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks. A lot better now after that introduction. Thank you for that.
I try my best. Obviously, we've only got a short time, and I wish I could speak to you longer. But
yeah,
let's start with the beginning. I've seen in other interviews you talked about how you got into MMA. You know, you were watching UFC. You grew up in, obviously, is it Greenock, Scotland?
Yeah,
right?
Greenock, Scotland. Yeah.
So in a town near Glasgow, and you're watching the UFC, and then you also have this confrontation, which you weren't able to, as in your words, like defend yourself properly.
Yeah.
And you get into the sport, start training. How has that kind of shaped you in terms of getting into your career? And if somebody asks you, like I'm asking you now, how do you think that start of your career is impacted your career trajectory and how you've been in the sport so far?
Yeah, it's crazy because you're kind of like, it's definitely shaped, martial arts has shaped my personality and who I am. And it's definitely built a lot of like confidence, resilience, self-esteem. A lot of like my personalities, like I think it's almost like me flourish as a person. As a teenager, I was maybe very insecure, and I wasn't confident in who I was. But martial arts is when I walked into a martial arts gym and I just had my head down. I was working hard, and a lot of people were almost like taking to me or liking to me. And I thought, I'm not even like I don't really know. I've not even said anything, but it was just I put my head down. I worked hard, and then I just started realising like I can be who I am, and it's okay to do that. And yeah, as I said, it's flourished my character, and it's almost unleashed like I've always been extremely competitive, but I've never been able to channel that energy, and I was always a bad loser, whereas that's channeled everything into a positive career.
I think that's a really cool story and something to come out. I'm assuming, if you don't mind going into the conversation a little bit, I don't know if it's how bad it was or whatever.
No.
But, you know, kind of that growth in that part of your career, that side of your personality, that opportunity to grow as a person and as an athlete, coming from a place of fear. What was going on in that confrontation?
Yeah, no. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't anything serious. It was just we were out with friends, and I was the youngest. I got picked, youngest, smallest, and bigger people basically came to like pick on me and want to fight with me, and I was so scared I couldn't even speak up for myself, and I had to get my friends. They identified the situation and they came in and almost like pushed people away and took me away from the situation. And I just remember thinking I was so scared and terrified that I couldn't even have the words to settle and diffuse whatever situation was about to happen. I thought I'll never let myself get put in that position again. And in terms of the friends who I'm still friends with today, obviously, I said if they ever need me, I need to be in a position that I can stand in and protect them the way they protected me. And again, the grand scale of things, the event wasn't like bad or anything, but for me, it just obviously in hindsight, it shaped the rest of my life because if someone was to come up to me now, it's not so much the physical part that I wanted. I just wanted the confidence to be like, well, mate, why are you picking on me? Like, you don't need this like in your night. Like, let's just enjoy ourselves and stuff. So that for me is a win in life.
Yeah, and I'm sure people are coming up to you now and trying to pick on you at all because you know.
You've had a couple of times like where maybe like people are drunk and stuff, and I'm like, I just laugh, or I'm like, you don't like,
you don't know what you're about to get into.
Nobody needs this, and I was like, but like, yeah, in terms of like that event like that, it's mad because that person who has done that, I don't know what they're doing with their life now, but like they've shaped this like athletic career and. Obviously, as a young sports person, I've always wanted to be a footballer. And you just channel that kind of visualising and manifesting into mixed martial arts.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. It really is, and that's why I wanted to just ask you about that. Obviously, like very successful amateur career. I saw it as like 8-1. I watched your fight against Aaron Towns armbar. That was, I think, your last fight before you turned pro.
Yeah.
And then obviously now 8-3 in the pros. Like, you know, it's been so successful, and you're such a dominant fighter on the ground, so threatening with submissions. It's really, entertaining way with grappling. I know a lot of people in the community at the moment are kind of getting upset with fighters that are kind of holding each other up against the fence. It's like a big debate, online on Twitter or whatever. But you are just an absolute entertaining, electric grappler and always dangerous.
Thank you.
And your opponent is too. I know he's coming off a rear naked choke win, I believe, against Loof. And so what do you know about Wesley Maia? What are you thinking? Where's your mind going into this fight?
Yeah, again, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And I know I've got a lot of like victories through grappling, and I think like in terms of my style, like I've had to like make a lot of adjustments to make sure that I'm not one dimensional in terms of jiu-jitsu, wrestling, or striking. That is definitely a criticism I had like in the Cameron Ells fight where I was chasing an arm triangle, and it sounds silly, but if I land a few elbows round two, that's not a close round. Some people might think 3.5 minutes control beats him punching me getting back down, but ultimately that had to make me go back to the drawing board and realise I need to improve. Even my jiu-jitsu, it's always been this case, but it's just more of a focus. It's all MMA focused, and I've had to design that and to become like the next level in terms of MMA and mixed martial arts. So I appreciate the kind of words on the grappling side of things, but you're going to see much better versions of myself in the future because of that, because it's something I've been definitely working on. And in terms of Wesley Maia, I've known about him for a long time. We actually, I was 2-0 and I got an opportunity to fight in Cage Warriors, but at the time, like, I remember Ian Dean said to my coach Dean, like, "Oh, the only guy we've got is this guy," and I think he was like 5-4. And Dean was like, "No, he's far too experienced. Right. Maybe I just want Reese to have 2 more fights." That's what he said, 2 more fights, and then he'll fight anyone in your roster. I was like, right, okay. So that was lockdown, and at the time, I think Wesley was like, there was a lot of momentum behind him. So yeah, I've obviously known about him for a long time. He's had some huge wins in other promotions. He's had some huge wins in Cage Warriors. He's a big name. He's electric. He's very well rounded. I think he's a nice, respectable guy. He's had some big losses as well, which is a lot to be said for MMA. See, when you look at records and you see, like, I know the circumstances was in 24 hours, but guys like Jack Shore beating him, or even Kadrian beat him in the prize fighter. They're big names, and if you think about what they've went on to do, he lost to Martione, who won the world, like the Cage Warriors World title. So I've got a lot of respect for Wesley, and his skills and his ability is definitely. I think any fighter knows what I'm talking about. It lights a fire in your belly because you get scared, you get fear. There's a fear element there, like, and it brings the best out of you in training because I need to perform the best that I can and make sure everything's in place to beat this guy. So
I think that's a really cool insight for people who aren't fighters and people like myself. Like the fact that fear is a good thing. When fighters talk about fear is a good thing, it's a really cool insight. But also you mentioned fear and you mentioned the Cameron Ells fight, and obviously you're coming off a rear naked choke win against Harrow, right? And that was after 2 losses. A lot of what I like to do on this podcast when I speak with fighters and doing episodes on my own and things like that is talk about why I think fighters are so special. And that's because, and I'll get on to another reason why, which is my last question for you. But coming off those 2 losses, and obviously the Ells fight was a very close fight, it was a split decision. What's the mentality like that, especially in fighting? You're literally hand-to-hand combat with another person. They're trying to kill you. You're trying to kill them in a professional, sanctioned setting. But what's the mentality of coming off 2 losses and then stepping back in there? And how do you approach that? How is that preparation going?
Every fight is different, right? Every fight has its different story, different emotions, different feeling, different approach, different game plan, different strategy. So it's hard to almost like give you like a standard answer that could be replicated into everyone. And I think it's so important, like, see, fear is an emotion. I think fighters aren't allowed to come out. See, if I come out and say, my opponent's fantastic, he's dangerous, this is his strengths, this is what I can't do, and a lot of that can get taken out of context. But I'm fighting someone on Cage Warriors, Europe's best promotion. I fought a guy that's had 10 professional wins and 16 professional fights. Like, he's a dangerous guy. See, if I walked out in the streets and I just started fighting with someone, there's a chance that they're going to land a punch. Never mind a professional MMA fight against a high-level guy that trains at a high-level gym who's also, for the last 10 weeks, has been preparing to fight me. So that's like the context of like, and of that, like, of fighting someone. And then in terms of fear, like fear, nerves, any sort of negative emotion, these are okay if you channel it in a positive way. If I go to training and I make a mistake, I'm telling myself off, like, I can't do that in the fight. I have to be as close to perfect as possible. I've got my coaches that are being overly critical and also complimentary at the same time because they know how big of a test it is. And in terms of the emotion going into like the Miguel Harrell fight, I just had to continue. I had to continuously like I had to put whatever was behind me in terms of like the emotional side of things, and my mentality and my technique and my game plan had to be stronger than any emotions. I couldn't go into that fight thinking of what the last two fights were like. Vice versa, if I won my last two fights, I couldn't go in to it thinking, oh, I'm 2-0 my last fights or I'm 0-2. You have to go in and approach it like a brand new fight. It's 0-0 and you need to be 1-0.
Right, so never too high, never too low. And like you mentioned, you had some emotions, or you had to block out the emotions and focus on the game. What were those emotions? What specific emotions were you feeling after those two losses?
After the Els fight, I felt like I rebuilt myself in terms of like I made a lot of changes that not a lot of people would be able to see. I had a lot of conversations, a lot of difficult conversations that ended up like I would say like reshape and like I don't know, reshaped and rebuilt like my work life, which is the gym, and also my personal life. It really created it really, I don't know what, I don't know how to describe it because it's so far gone now that everything right now in terms of like my professional and personal career, I'm extremely happy. Everything that maybe, let's say, I addressed after the Els fight in terms of myself or coaches or everything's just taken a whole new level. So like in terms of like this fight, I keep saying my coaches, my training partners have done their job. And now it's on to me in the 19th of April. And that's the biggest, almost like, that's the biggest and the best way that I can say how better everything's went from that else loss. Like, because losses are extremely difficult, especially close ones like that. And I had to look back at my style. I had to literally strip everything down from my technical ability, the way I approach the sport, the way that my gym like environment was, and that's not like I'm passing any blame. I was just saying like I had to literally start from scratch and be like, where do I go from here? You know, like, and that's why I say I kept feeling like I rebuilt myself.
And that's amazing. I think a lot of people who are supporting you have watched your fights. That just makes us more excited, you know, for this weekend because we're going to see the best version of you, hopefully. And
the Harrow fight, I think the way we talk about the changes in my approach, like the Harrow fight, like that was an experienced veteran, 20 plus professional fights. He was very physical and they're very strong.
He looked strong. I was about to say he looked strong.
And he was not to be disrespectful. Like the rule changes now where like he was like kind of going in front headlock, but the rule changes is you can knee to the head now. But my coach Dean put it to me in a nice way and he said the old version of you I think would have submitted him faster. But you stuck to your game plan, you broke him down and you were attempting submissions. Maybe because you were so desperate to get a win. But you got he said, I feel you got that submission in 3 because you broke him because you were on him. You know, like, so that was like opening up a next level. And obviously, like, that was like a good fight with all the changes that I made. And that was like, right, now let's carry this momentum and we'll take that on to next week.
Right. It definitely was a mature performance and that's something I think a lot of people noticed. I've got one, I know, but you've probably got to go.
No, you're fine, absolutely fine.
I've got one question that I think is, you know, really important. I'm talking to a lot of fighters about this at the moment, and I'd love to hear what you have to say because, you know, you've spoken about your goal is to be in the UFC, obviously, be a champion in the UFC. Obviously, Cage Warriors champ first, then get into the UFC, be UFC champ. And for somebody who is, you know, pursuing a long-term championship career, you could want to be doing this for quite a while. Do you ever think, and this is a thing I talk about on my podcast a lot, do you ever think about accumulating damage on the body, whether that's, you know, brain or that's physical, whether that's, you know, your joints, your knees, literally anything, but specifically, more specifically, like brain health? Is that something that's on your mind, both short term and long term, as you understand, you know, I want to be a champ, I want to be doing this for a long time?
Of course. I think like, see like, so me now is the experience kind of like mature professional, I think more present day. And what I'm going to say is getting taken out of context. It's not that I don't care about it. It's like, see like the Cage Warriors title or the UFC or the things that are beyond the fight. That's almost like in the back of my head. Whereas before it was the daydreamer that got me to where I am today. Whereas it was all about, I want to sign to Cage Warriors. I want these big goals. I want to do that. Whereas now it is literally, I strip it all down day by day, daily wins, train improve, compete, fight 0-0, like I said, fight 1-0, 0-1, whatever the record is, back to 0-0, and then you go. And those wee small wins, those marginal gains will continue, incremental gains will add up, and then the daydream, the long-term goals will come together. But in terms of like long-term damage, for me, I've always been very aware of that. I don't feel like I got, luckily, like safe MMA, you get brain scans, I just had one there and everything's good. I can count on, honestly, I think I've had one concussion in 10 years.
Right.
And that was from a head clash in wrestling. And in terms of concussion symptoms, it was very minor, but it was a head clash, which is accidental. The way I train, again, we talk about changes. After the Elks fight, I went into fights injured. I've eliminated any unsafe training partners. I don't train with anyone that doesn't get a check off my coaches. And the only way they get a check is basically they'll put them with me and say, don't worry. Like, we've basically put them under a test and they're safe and they're fine. And I'm the same. Like, I don't train with any dangerous training partners. So like, in terms of like my environment in the gym, it's a safe training environment. And in terms of my body health, like, I have always been on top of keeping good physical shape and good mental shape, especially the way we spar. We don't spar hard. Spar hard, but not to the brain, like, you know. And
Right.
my coaches are very aware of our long-term health as me as an athlete, everyone as a human being. And I've got to think, like, my professional career will be over one day. You cannot fight forever. I'm not going to be one of those guys you're going to see me fighting 45, 46 bare knuckle boxing. You know, that's no disrespect. That's just not me.
Exactly.
I'm going to, once I've reached my potential, I'll put my two hands up in the air and say I gave my career, my everything, and I move on to be a coach. Therefore, my brain, my hands, I want to be a dad. I want a life.
Yeah.
So I've got to look after my health.
Right. And I think that's really refreshing to hear. And I've spoken to another Cage Warriors fighter, Bobby Winder, and he kind of spoke similar about sparring, you know, trying not to just go hard sparring. He was like, this is ridiculous. And he's actually got like a medicine background himself as well. So he was talking about like, we're not going to last if we keep sparring like hard every session. It's just the most ridiculous thing to do.
It's about the information that, like, the way that we spar in the gym, or the way that I wrestle, the way that I do jiu-jitsu, or like, my training partner can throw a head kick and we can give a wee nod and like, you pulled that, thanks, or we'll give a good shot, or we can hit hard to the body of the legs. It's not like I've passed the test. I don't need to show how tough I am in the gym. Like, you do need that. You do need that apprenticeship. Like, you need to prove to the people around you that you are tough, and you are going to, when push comes to shove, you're going to bite in your gum shield and you're going to keep coming forward. But that's once you got by that, there's a point of no return in terms of your brain health, and also if you're fighting in the gym, you're not going to take risks. Right. You're just going to want to win every round. We are in our gym at the Grip House. We do a lot of safe training. We do a lot of positional training. We do a lot of worst case scenario training, because let's say I'm the most experienced guy, or I'm training against somebody who's more experienced, who's always got my number. I need to be in mount, back, in submission. I need to get submitted. I need to be open to all these kind of techniques and transitions that you wouldn't get if you were both playing your A game.
Right.
You know?
You need to put yourself in difficult positions, right? Because obviously in the fight, the strategy is just to play to your own strengths as much as possible, right? Because it's a win and a loss, goes on your record. You can get damaged. In the gym, I think that's a call for other young fighters to hear, probably. That you do need to put yourself in hard positions. It sucks, I imagine.
The gym is learning, so like then it's not demoralising if I go and grab someone who's 10 kilograms heavier, 10 kilograms lighter, and they're like, what's the point of this? We can both learn from this round. Right. I've sparred, I'm just talking about safe, but I've sparred with like 90 kilogram guys, and they've been safer than some 70 kilo guys because they're so courteous, and we've both got something from the round. So training is about learning and evolving. And if you're in the right environment, you will do that in a safe way. And if you don't do that, you'll see a lot of fighters who will go into fights damaged, or their brain health will be poor without you knowing, because they're just sparring so hard in the gym.
Right. And I think, I've got two more questions, and one of them is a more serious thing. Like, it's not in terms of like, I've got shoulder surgery on Wednesday. I tore my labrum playing basketball, and I know like that's going to be 9 months before I'm back to doing any sort of sport, or back to training Muay Thai, or back to, doing the things I like to do. But as an athlete, as a fighter, physical injuries like a shoulder tear or a knee ligament tear, have you had to deal with anything like that? And what does that feel like for a pro fighter to not be able to get in the cage and be active?
So this is the thing about like I've torn my MCL, I've had a broken rib, and I've had small injuries. Like 5 weeks before the Karen Ells fight, my kneecap was out of place. Like it literally was not in place. Like, and my physio telling me, I remember him telling me 3 weeks after the training injury happened, he was like, "This won't come back into place like before this fight. It'll take 6-7 weeks."
Oh.
And I'm like, right. I was like, I'm in the zone. I had bursitis before the Sam Spencer fight. I had an injury called tennis leg before the Gittins fight for 5 months. But when you're in the zone, you're thinking, I will beat this guy no matter what. But in hindsight, I shouldn't be dealing with these things. I shouldn't go into fighting a knockout artist without the use of my right leg.
That's probably not a good idea to be.
You know, and I shouldn't be fighting a world title fight without the use of like a leg as well, like having tennis leg, like not being able to kick or get kicked off for 5 months. I went into the two of the biggest fights of my life where you win those fights in terms of the title fight or fighting a former UFC fighter, you win those fights. I'm not the only fighter, I'm just saying like in terms of health, I should be going to these fights compromised. They're hard enough.
Right.
So for me, when I think about injuries, that's why the training environment has to be optimal and it has to be safe as possible, because that's the chances that's where you're going to spend most of your time.
Right.
Training partners and overtraining is going to be the two biggest ways that you're going to get injured.
Right. That's cool insight. And so, yeah, everybody, tune in this weekend or
And I hate seeing that. I don't see those injuries. Sorry.
That's right.
I never talk about them. And those injuries, I never talk about them, because see, if you win, like when I fought against Sam Spencer, I had bursitis in my knee for 3 weeks and I couldn't grapple. You're like, oh, you're a hero, you fought through that injured. And if you lose, you're a bad loser.
Right.
That's not the reason why I lost the fights.
No,
they may have been a factor.
I'm not asking you to about that for anyone. I'm genuinely interested because I think it's a side of the game that people kind of take for granted. Like, yeah, okay, every professional athlete in sports across across all sports comes into their profession with some injury, whether it's a bit of a nickel or naggle here. But in pro fighting, the injuries are so much higher, obviously, because of the style of training you guys are doing. And the actual consequences of losing are not just a loss on the record. It's actual damage, long-term things going on. So if you come into a fight injured and you're not able to perform at your best, you're really putting yourself in a precarious situation life-wise.
And I've got to be aware of that, but I've also, that's what I talk about the room, the guys in my room. I've got to have guys in my training room to be like, let's say this technique, it's quite unsafe and I'm not going to do that. Like, this is a funny example, but when we were finished sparring on Friday, I'd done my fight simulation rounds. My coach was like, you're done for the night. Perfect rounds, couldn't ask for anything better. And then he's like, Reese, can I use you to demonstrate? And then he just went, nah, because I'm scared I slip and I headbutt you and clash or something ridiculous. So I'm always wary of being safe, but I need training partners and coaches around me to be like, he's got a big fight coming up, do not injure him.
Right. And I think that's a thing. Like, I think the biggest example I can think of recently with that is when Charles Oliveira was supposed to rematch Islam Makhachev, and then a week before the fight, he's sparring, or his last sparring session, huge cut on his eyebrow. You're like, why are you sparring? How has it happened the week before the fight?
If I'm with someone, I have no issue getting taken down, getting beaten in the gym, getting tapped out. But if I've got someone who's willing to break me, then I'll just never train with you again.
Yeah. Good. It's an announcement, PSA right here. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks. Good questions.
Yeah. No, because I feel like it's important, and like I prefer it instead of just asking you about like how are you going to win the fight next week.
Yeah. And then because you're like, I'm just going to win. Do you think you'll win? Like, nah.
Yeah, and even if like you're going to tell me your entire game plan, no, it just doesn't make sense. It's a silly
I know.
thing to say something.
I know.
But
no, thank you.
I mean, I'm very excited for you to see you back in there. And hopefully you can get a win. So yeah, everybody tune in this weekend for KJoy's 187. Before you go, I just want to do like sometimes I do this with fighters. It's like a 1-word game. Just I say a fighter's name and you say one word. All right.
All that.
Okay. Champion of your division, but in the UFC, Merab Dvalishvili.
Machine.
He's honestly, there's something wrong with him. I don't know how his cardio is that good.
Yeah.
Okay. Sean O'Malley, who's fighting Merab?
Creative.
Paul Craig, Scotland legend.
Legend.
All right. Best heavyweight in the world, in my opinion. I know it's good for Tom Aspinall.
Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, let's go. Okay, Peter Yan in the UFC as well.
Relentless.
Yeah, he's amazing. All right. Your opponent this weekend, Wesley Maia.
Funny.
Honey?
He made me laugh. He sent me a happy birthday message, didn't he? And that's how he called me out. He made me laugh.
Yeah, how you got to repay the favor? Just punch him in the face when you see him. So.
Oh, it's all business in the cage for sure. Definitely. Yeah. No, definitely.
All right. And last one, Reese McEwan.
Competitor.
There you go. All right. Thank you so much, Reese. I really appreciate you taking the time.
How can you make me describe myself in one word without giving me a whole interview just to big myself up? No, I'm joking.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Otherwise, it would have been over at the start if I asked you at the start.
So it's 55 minutes. Don't do that. No, thank you, mate. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Reese. And good luck this weekend, all right?
Thank you. Thank you very much. See you later.
See you, brother. Thank you.
Bye.